I made a stupid mistake today. I looked at the investing app on my phone. It is nasty. It's horrible. A newsletter operators, are we screwed? What's going on?
This impacts real people, and they're going to be like, hey, I need to start cutting budget. And if they had to choose between you and Netflix, they're probably going to kill you. Everyone started freaking out. I was getting emails saying, hey, we can't run ads with you anymore. Hey, can we do a discount?
We don't know where the advertising revenue is necessarily going to come from. We need to just pump the brakes a little and see what happens.
I think there's going to be some rough times ahead.
Right before this recording, I looked at the investing app on my phone, and it is nasty. It's horrible. Tariffs have been hitting me pretty hard in the Louis household. It's not looking good. But it kind of got me wondering, what does this mean for newsletters? And I'm hoping that you can bring something to the table on this, because I know absolutely nothing about tariffs. Pretty much the first time I ever even thought about them was like 2 weeks ago. And I'm really hoping that I never have to think about them again. So, a newsletter operators, are we screwed? What's going on?
The short answer is yes. So I'm curious, what's the word over? You're in Portugal, right? I never know
Yeah.
where you are. So
Yeah.
what's the word over there? Are you guys talking about this? Are you thinking about this? Because obviously I'm kind of boots on the ground in the U.S., kind of in the finance space. But what's the word on the street over there?
Oh, well, I am a very typical expat, and I have basically no Portuguese friends, so I have no idea what they're talking about. But most of my
Okay.
American friends who are here, or my European friends who work at tech companies mainly selling into the US, are pretty worried, pretty
Yes.
annoyed, I would say, with the US. It's pretty, I don't know. It's like having an upstairs neighbor who's decided that they're going to like stab themselves in the foot repeatedly, and you're going to have to listen to it for the next couple of years. So we're not loving it. Not loving what's happened to the bank account. Definitely with Sparkloop and my newsletter and everything. Uh, well, most of my investments being in the US or in USD, it has not been
Mhm.
a nice week or two. I think I earned probably like 10% less than I earned 2 weeks ago, pretty much in like purchasing power parity. So it's been a sucky time. But yeah, I'm gonna still be here in 5 years. Maybe some newsletters won't. So what are you thinking?
Yeah, so I coming from the perspective in writing the water coolest, this is basically all I've been talking about to your point for the past 2 weeks, and even before that, when Trump was kind of threatening all of this. So I do think that there's a lot of implications for newsletters, and I think a lot of them are bad. But I promise I will get to some good. I think there's some good that can come out of this. But first, the bad. I think just a level set, right? So you know where we're at. There's 145% tariffs right now, basically on China, and then all the other tariffs on all the other whatever 180 countries are basically paused for the next 90 days. So knowing that, I think any ties that you have to China are going to be an issue. And by that you might say, hey, I have a newsletter. What does China matter, right? Like I'm not writing, cynicism or something like that, right? But I think the big problem is if you're working with advertisers that rely on items that are coming from China. So basically every direct to consumer brand that is buying cheap stuff, shipping it to America, if you have them as advertisers, the first thing they're probably going to start cutting is email newsletter ads. And I say that because one, they're easy to turn off, right? Because they're probably only signing a handful of them with you. So I'd be pretty concerned about that. And then I think the other thing that, that stands out to me is more broadly, right, to your point of people kind of freaking out about it on both sides of the pond, is there's the fear of the R word, right? Recession. And I think anytime you hear that, people are going to, their buttholes are going to clench a little bit and they're going to say, hey, I don't want to spend as much. And one of the things that companies are going to stop spending on is probably advertising dollars. And I think the other thing too, right? So you could have a newsletter that's totally ad driven. That's great. But even if you have something that's more of a product, you're selling a subscription or something, you have to consider that, this impacts real people and they're going to be like, hey, I need to start cutting budget. And, maybe your newsletter subscription for $10 a month is something that it might not move the needle, but it's one of those psychological things where it makes people feel better that they're not spending as much, right? And if they had to choose between you and Netflix, they're probably going to kill you, unfortunately. So I think there is some going to be some real impact for newsletters based on tariffs. I think the biggest thing though, right, is just going to be all the uncertainty around it. The pause for 90 days, that's going on with the tariffs right now. I think that just creates another 90 days of wait and see. And anytime there's any wait and see, I think it's generally really bad for the ad industry. And some of those dollars dry up. Now, I will say, because I lived through it in, owning a newsletter and writing an ad supported newsletter, this is much different than COVID, right? Whereas when COVID struck, everything dried up, I would say almost overnight. Like it was, I could probably tell you the date, right? It was like March 20th, 2020. Everyone started freaking out. I was getting emails saying, "Hey, we can't run ads with you anymore. Hey, can we do a discount?" And I think that was across the board. This time it's a little bit different. I think there's like a little bit more of a wait and see. But I do think the longer this drags on, we are going to see a lot of the ad dollars dry up. And then just generally other ways that you're making money on your newsletter, a lot of those dollars are going to go away because people just don't want to spend a lot when they don't know what the hell is going to happen with their money.
Yeah, that's a bummer. I was hoping that you were gonna say all of that money that people were spending on like Temu and like Shane imports of like those trashy, like $5 consumer goods, that was all gonna get redirected straight into newsletter subscriptions. So
I
this is
yeah,
a
that
low
that
point.
was actually like in my notes as that could be the worst possible newsletter to have being written. If you're doing anything with like Timu, you are totally screwed. It's a bad business to be in right now, because just so everyone knows, basically those guys used to use a loophole that they would be able to ship thing cheap goods from China to the US without paying tariffs on them because they were sending, under a certain amount. The White House essentially closed that loophole. And so now Timu, it just came out yesterday, they're basically jacking up prices. They're pulling away all their ad dollars from Facebook. So I think the thing to think about is like all of this stuff has kind of this trickle down effect, and it might not impact you right this second, like things did during COVID, but this stuff is going to slow down. And I had a conversation yesterday with a mutual friend in the business, and he was saying the same thing. Like Q1 was probably one of the strongest that I've seen and he's seen for ad dollars in quite a while. And it's a real bummer that now there's this overhang. And I was kind of hoping that things would get much better, but that's why we hopefully you'll all live to fight another day. But I think there's going to be some rough times ahead, which I will segue. I think that provides some opportunity. But before we get into that, I'm curious, what does it mean? What are you doing at Spark Loop? What's the kit team? I don't know if you have any insight to that, but like, how are they thinking about these things? How are you thinking about it as a business owner? Have you put together a SWAT team to be like, hey, we need to be thinking about this every day? Or are you kind of like, let's ride this out?
Yeah, no, for us it's been difficult. We found a workaround. For context, as public, we work with like hundreds of the bigger newsletter names that you would know that are spending, six figures, seven figures a month on newsletter
Mhm.
growth. And they have definitely gone, whoa, we don't know where the advertising revenue is necessarily going to come from. We don't know if we're going to make what we're spending now back. We need to just pump the brakes a little and see what happens. At the same time, uh, all of the consumer goods brands pretty much are kind of doing the same thing. So paradoxically, like meta ads at the moment, a little bit cheaper than you would normally think they would be. So then if you're a newsletter, you're going, well, my cost of goods hasn't changed, or like, I don't know if it's technically cost of goods, but like, it doesn't, I don't have any tariffs like affecting me immediately, right? So like, if it's cheaper to acquire subscribers, we should probably still do that, but we need to go out and we need to see if there is some other source of revenue or like rethink that. And basically, all of the things that they should have been doing sort of while the government was good over the last 2 years, they can now use this as an excuse to do that, right? So if they wanted to lay someone off, tariffs, sorry, bye. Right? If they want to stop a project they weren't super excited with, tariffs, sorry, we're stopping this. Right? It's been a while. It's been a couple of years since they've had the
Yeah.
COVID excuse, so this has been like
Mhm.
a nice reminder that you can just sort of like not do whatever you don't want to do, basically, right now. Um, the other thing I'll say that's really interesting is we're seeing huge spikes in growth for newsletters that are politics and like news slash economics related. And
Mhm.
normally this is supposed to be sort of their winter, right? They're supposed to be in hibernation right now.
Yep.
Nothing's supposed to happen until the midterms. And they are all sort of like running around having like the time of their lives, getting ridiculous numbers of free subscribers because everybody is panicking and thinking about this all the time. So if you're in that business, it's, I think, as a newsletter, a weirdly good time to be there, especially like in the US, do you call it punditry? Basically, like the opinion having, I guess, and like commentary
Yeah.
rather than sort of necessarily like an expertise having. That seems to be going really, really well at the moment. If you run that kind of newsletter, you are like swimming in new subscribers, and people are very happy to pay money to to learn more about that kind of thing. So
Right.
good and bad, I guess, is what I'm seeing. What are you
Yeah,
doing at the water cooler? So what are you doing with the newsletters you're working with?
I think the I totally agree with you, right? And, it's a really good point because I always say, right, like the COVID, was the best thing that ever happened to me because it legitimately was the reason that I ended up getting acquired because of a series of events that kind of led to Barstool changing some of their priorities. But I think that these sort of things provide a lot of opportunity. It's a really good point, right? With people are more interested in news, people are more interested in finance, and I see it with the water coolest, right? It's like it's always the spike in interest when bad things happen, right? So there was like past couple of years, it was like Silicon Valley Bank issue, right? There was the regional bank run. Like anytime bad stuff is happening, not only is it super interesting, but I think people just kind of freak out and they want guidance. And it's a really interesting point that you mentioned about the the punditry or the talking heads, right? I think people like want that comfort if they just want to talk about it, and maybe it's not just like getting the facts, but I do think that there's an opportunity to capitalize on that. So I was actually thinking about this before, and I was like, okay, if I had the money and if I had the resources to do this, what would I do to capitalize on this moment? And the first thing is I would spend more on Facebook and Meta, to your point, because I think there's a big opportunity there. And I would probably switch my language, right? So instead of saying, for example, for the water coolest, instead of saying be a better investor in 5 minutes or whatever kind of hook we use, I would say something like better understand tariffs or how to make more money in a time like in when there's a lot of crazy stuff going on. Probably not that, but something along those lines. And I think that's a really big opportunity. And to your point earlier about Timu, I think there's this going to be this interesting time because it sounds like all that money is going away from Facebook. And I don't know if you've seen, I don't know the exact numbers, but it is a huge amount that Timu was pumping into to Facebook, and it accounted for a huge amount of their revenue. So I think probably the cost of ads are going to go up at some point. But right now, with the pullback of some of these, I think there's this weird in between where you can probably get some ads cheaper. So I'd definitely be pouring money into that. And then I think the other thing, and this is probably just a resource problem in similar to what I said about the ads, is I would think about a pop-up newsletter. And I think a lot of people sleep on this. So I I basically have in the newsletter every day is almost what I'd call a pop-up section where I'm covering the news of the tariffs every single day. And I haven't named it anything. I probably should name it something funny and, Tyler on tariffs or, Trump's tariffs or something like that. But I think you could start an entire newsletter about that. And I've seen some brands do it. Like I know like MSNBC and some more of the political, kind of leaning networks, they've done a good job of this where there's something going on. I think MSNBC does something. They mentioned that was like very popular when the Supreme Court is in session. I think they go in session. I don't know exactly how it works. I should know this. You definitely don't know this. But they cover what's going on, right? And it's just like its own newsletter. It only happens during a certain time of the year. And they mentioned that it was super popular. And I know, other folks do this again during midterms, but I think you could capitalize on these events a little bit more. And I'd be smart to start a brand new newsletter to be like, hey, the only thing we're talking about, I'm going to update you 3 minutes a day on what's happening with tariffs, what it means for your bottom line. You can sign up here. And guess what? You're also opting into the water coolest. So it's a bit of I like I like the word because it makes me laugh, but newsjacking, right? Like you see people do that. It's really popular to do on on Twitter, Instagram. We just saw there was a gold one. I don't know if you saw, but Wendy's commented on Katy Perry. Katy Perry went to space on the Amazon Blue Origin or the Blue Origin, and Wendy's kind of like jacked that, made it funny, right? And it's such a good idea, and I think you could do that with something like a pop up newsletter, and kind of borrow from what's going on, and when it fades away, you still have those subscribers and you can pull them into your kind of normal or everyday newsletter. So that's one thing. Honestly, I wish I had the capacity to do, but we're kind of running a 1.5 man show over here, so can't do it. But I do think that's a big opportunity, and people probably sleep on those a little bit. I haven't seen anyone try to do it so far with this thing. I saw some people do it during COVID, and I think it worked really well, especially after they realized this thing's going to be around for a while.
Yeah, I did it in COVID. I was running a newsletter helping like developers, techie people learn how to do sales. And when COVID hit, I just sort of like branched that out into like how to do virtual sales as well. And people were super excited to be like, here's how to do a Zoom call and all that kind of stuff. And it definitely helped. Like also like how to like when you're in like a COVID situation, like how to talk about like the specific pain points and fears and stuff that they might be having and how that's different to normal and how to figure those out and all that kind
And
of
and
stuff.
now are all those people in your other newsletter?
Those people did end up in the other newsletter. That newsletter got sold, and then they never did anything with it, which was their own fault. But they did end
I
up there. Yeah.
I had no idea you had an exit, a newsletter exit.
Oh, a huge one. Yeah. I mean, we're talking low five figures. It was pretty impressive.
Wait, tell me about that. Let's time out for a second here on tariffs. What was that about?
So I wrote a newsletter called Sales for Founders. I wrote it every week, teaching technical people how to do sales, basically based on my own experience,
Cool.
and built an info product, like a course around it. Did some async course stuff, did some live cohorts. It was kind of while I was between, like before I started Sparkloop and after I'd sold my previous tech company. And it was kind of just out of boredom. And I enjoyed the writing, enjoyed sort of the rhythm of doing it on them. Originally MailChimp, then moved it to ConvertKit. And yeah, I mean, the only revenue stream was the the info product stuff. It was pulling in, I think, like 30 or $40,000 every quarter, so it was pretty nice. Um, and then started taking off. I didn't have time to do anything with it anymore. Just completely let it. Like I went radio silent for like a year, thinking, okay, next week is going to be the week I start this back up. Next week I'm going to have time to do something
That
else.
sounds like
I
us
never
trying to
did.
start this podcast, right? But like we're gonna start it next week. We were gonna start it
Exactly.
around Christmas time. FYI,
Exactly.
guys.
Christmas time 2026 is fine. We're like way ahead of track. Yeah. Anyway, and then like after a year, obviously it was cold, so it was worth a lot less. And like, there's always that risk if it's like a sort of a personality driven newsletter of like, okay, if I buy this, will people buy the same stuff from me? So
Yep.
I ended up letting it go for like low five figures, like low to mid five figures, basically.
That's really cool, man. I thought I was gonna be able to, hold the exit over your head that I had a real newsletter exit, but I guess not. You also have a tech exit. So
I mean, I think you can probably beat my low to mid five figures exit. I hope, and you got it back.
yes, yes. Yeah, that's a story for for another day.
Which we
All
should
right,
get
so
into.
we
On the tariffs thing, though, like one thing I've been thinking about, and this is where like my sort of founder's brain goes to, is if when everyone's panicking, whenever anything changes, and whenever anyone says, okay, this is going to be bad for us, my brain immediately goes to, okay, but like, how could this be good for me? Who is this going to be good for? Like, what, this thing breaking must have created some sort of new opening or opportunity that wasn't there before. And what is it? So I don't know. What do you think on that? Have you seen anything?
Yes, I think when shit hits the fan, there's always gonna be an opportunity, and so I think the people who have I'll put it this way, people who created good newsletter businesses, not just created newsletters, I think are really well positioned, and basically I look at it as like, if you can weather the storm, I think there's quite a bit of opportunity. So I think the big thing, right, is like thinking about how you can use this moment to create new content or create something else, right? Like we talked about the pop-up newsletter. But I also think, and I don't wish this upon anybody except, maybe my competitors, is I think this is also going to be an opportunity to buy, right? So I think there's going to be quite a few newsletters, right? Uh, and again, I don't wish this on anybody. Like it would suck, right? But like you got to consider there's a lot of people out there with, 2, 3,000 people on a Beehive newsletter. They're writing it every week. Maybe they end up, losing their real job and they have, bigger things to worry about, or it just becomes less of a priority, because they need to figure out how to make money to afford eggs, those sort of things. So I think there's going to be a lot of people that basically get blown out because they're either going to realize it's nearly impossible to make money. It was already really hard to make money in newsletters, and it just became a whole lot harder, and they're just not willing to wait it out. So I think there's probably going to be more newsletters that are, and there's an opportunity to buy them. So I think the good businesses are going to be able to have their pick if they want. I actually don't love the idea of like buying a newsletter. I don't think it's super useful. But I think if people are acquisitive, it's now's probably a pretty good time to do it. So like I would start thinking about like who are your, targets, who have you been following, trying to figure out like who those smaller newsletters are. And I think I'll use Spark Loop and Boost. I think a good way to do that is like go on those platforms and see like who are the smaller players out there. I think on Spark Loop, can you see like roughly how many subscribers somebody has? Is that a feature?
You can. I think you can see how many, like how quickly they are growing, I think is what we show
Okay.
you rather than we don't show you their subscriber count. We show you like
Yeah.
how many subscribers they've been sending to people recently, how many people are signing up
Yeah, so, like,
as a sign of life.
right, like, I think if you go on Boost on Beehive, right, like, you can see a range. It's, like, 0 to 5,000, 5 to 25,000, right? So, it start looking at, like, making a hit list basically of, like, "Hey, this is my exact niche. This is a very small newsletter. They're not growing very fast, like, maybe I should have this guy's email, right? Just in case I notice that he stops publishing and I want to reach out to them." So I think it's unfortunate. It sucks. Like you never want to see anyone go out of business or stop doing what they love, but there could be an opportunity, I think, if you're acquisitive. And then I think the other thing is like these kind of big defining moments or I guess it's not a defining moment, but these big moments when things change and there's a lot of like unknowns. I think there's always just these random opportunities. And so I think just be open to them, whether it's, right, for example, the whole COVID thing ended up basically forcing Barstool, because sports shut down, to get into other things, which I want to say forced them, but led them to finance, which led them to acquiring my newsletter, right? So it's just like all these things that may not have happened. It's just this crazy series of events. And I think just kind of keep your ear to the ground for those things. And it's hard to say exactly what those are, but right, it could be like a merger or something like that. Maybe you don't want to sell your newsletter, but you want to merge with somebody. So just be cognizant of like those things. I think ratchet up quite a bit when bad stuff or really good stuff is happening. I think it just speeds up a lot of the opportunities that are out there.
One of the ways I'm seeing people do that actually is you've seen, I think partly related to this, but also just partly down to like the sort of what I think are like the inherent flaws in like newsletter ad networks, but a lot of people have started newsletters built sort of on the promise that eventually those ad networks are going to deliver. And if you look at the last 2 or 3 months, the main ones that people are turning to, uh, they are definitely not delivering. Like Beehive, for example, they had sort of they make this big song and dance about CPM deals. Those are gone. And you can see now if you're a smart, well, some newsletters, and I think it works better if you're a very broad based newsletter. So if you're like a 1440 or a Morning Brew or
Mhm.
someone like that, you can essentially now, there's no competition for those placements. Those newsletters are desperate for like any money they can get. So they're for like flooding the market with these very, very, very low ball deals. And they're essentially hoovering up like the very small percentage of actually good subscribers on those small newsletters for very, very cheap prices. Uh, so I think that's definitely one of those opportunities for sure.
I don't love like truly buying a newsletter. Like I don't think it's worth it. I think that's a great workaround where you're just like, let me go in and be like, hey, let me sponsor your newsletter for super cheap because you realize that they haven't had an ad in 2 months and they're probably going to take a couple $100 to do it. Right. So yeah, it's like look for these opportunities and kind of think a little bit outside the box. But I love that one.
And then the other thing I'm thinking about is like, I don't know if this is actually a thing or not, but there's a sentiment attached to tariffs, right? Like they are polarizing. People who previously had zero opinion on tariffs, who are normal humans, now pretty much everybody is pro tariff or anti tariff, and that has to create some opportunities. Like if you're pro tariff, or if you promote a pro tariff narrative, like surely there is money to be made in creating a newsletter that gives you good old fashioned American alternatives to that stuff that you were buying, right? There's got to be something in that
Hmm.
that would work out. Um, and vice versa. Like there's got to be something in like punditry or like supporting or like lifting up stories or I don't know what it is. Like, so there's got to be something like helping like invest and like support struggling businesses that are dependent on imports that have been hit by tariffs. I've seen a couple of stories of that, people like coming in and like, you know, um, journalists lifting up those stories. So I don't think that's like I think it's sort of like almost like an equal opportunities thing. But the fact that people have made this almost like a moral stance rather than just a pure logical economical thing means there's got to be some money to be made there somehow. Because if you've got people's hearts, then the minds and bodies are going to follow.
Yeah, I think a big opportunity, and I don't know how. I'm actually curious if this matters in the UK at all. Um, yeah, that's where you're originally from, right?
Yeah, yeah,
UK? Yeah,
yeah,
born and raised.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think there's a huge opportunity with this like made in America thing. Like that is huge in America. Like to say, you have a American flag on there, and like nothing's made in America anymore because it's so expensive. Except iPhones apparently are going to be in the next couple months. But it's such a huge opportunity. And I think like, could you start, a newsletter where you're featuring those products, something like that, or featuring those brands? And yeah, that's like just lean into it. Like lean into the right leaning, pro tariff, pro Trump, like just go for it. There's not much more of a, group and this is either side, right? That are just so passionate about the thing that they love. So it's like that could be a huge opportunity. And is that a thing in the UK or like elsewhere? Like we made this here in the UK, or do people not give a damn?
No, in the UK, we're almost the opposite. We kind of assume that if it's been made here, it must be kind of shitty because, like, everyone's like there's like 7.8 billion people in the world. Like, why would our random little island be the best place to make it?
Yeah,
There's probably got to be someone else. Made in Switzerland, which is I lived in Switzerland for like 15 years. That's a place where it's a legit thing. Like people will
yeah,
happily pay 10 times as much, literally, for something that is Swiss to support the local economy, and just because they know that the quality is going to be uh, really really good. So that in Switzerland is definitely like a thing. There's a lot more of that kind of like
yeah.
national pride,
It's
I
kind of
guess.
funny because in the US, we almost like know deep down that it's not going to be better, right? We know it's going to be more expensive, probably not as good, but to your point, there's just this whole like patriotism thing to it. So yeah, I think there's a big opportunity there. But yeah, I know you had another idea for an opportunity. We've been talking about tariffs for like half an hour now, but um, You brought me another opportunity for a newsletter that I'll probably steal, make a lot of money off of, and sell for low five figures. So tell me about this. I thought it was cool.
Yeah, I mean, if you build out a couple of these opportunities, sell them for a couple of low five figures, you will soon be able to afford half of a US manufactured iPhone. It's going to be pretty great. You can club together. You can sell your house, and all in all,
Yeah.
you can get it with you can get the iPhone 16 Pro. It's gonna be awesome.
Yes. Do not, if it was one I worked on, please do not. It's not going to work very well. I can promise you that. I can barely put a light bulb in. So, but yeah, what do you got on this?
I think this is going to be an absolutely huge opportunity. Do you remember BuzzFeed quizzes back in the day?
Oh, I do. Yes. Like which Disney princess I am. I know which house of, in Hogwarts I was, all that.
Yeah, exactly. And that was like that wave of newsletter growth that they rode. They found that opportunity of like very cheap organic reach on those
Mhm.
platforms like Facebook, and they crushed it. They could not even like understand the number of subscribers that they were getting through from those platforms if you talk to the people who were at BuzzFeed back then. And then you had like other waves, right? You've had the Apple News wave that was smaller. You've had Facebook ads being ridiculously cheap, and Morning Brew and The Hustle and people being able to grow because of that,
Yep.
right? And there isn't really a wave recently that people have been publicly talking about so much. Um, but a small one that I think is a window of opportunity that newsletters can absolutely take advantage of. And I think there will be some, I don't think there's going to be any $50 million newsletters built off this, but I think there's going to be a couple of like seven, low eight figure newsletters that are built off this, is entertaining short form videos. So TikTok, Instagram, the big places, YouTube Shorts has it as well. You spend any time on those platforms, like mindlessly on your phone, like pretty much everybody does, and
Mhm.
you're going to come across these like very easy to make, um, almost like auto generated quiz formats and entertainment formats, right? So, have you seen like the? Have you seen the one they call? I think it's called couples quiz. Have you seen that?
I have not. Is it on an adult website or is this
This is, yeah, it's pure OnlyFans content. No, this is
okay,
Instagram and
yeah, yeah.
TikTok, right? So it's the
That
kind of
that's
thing
where
that
the
when you
real money is out of newsletters, right? We'll talk about that. Maybe that's next week.
that's on our OnlyFans. That's for paying members only. It's my feet
Yes.
and Tyler's hot takes on drugs. But seriously, these couple quizzes, right? It's you're sitting there at home, you're scrolling, and it comes up and it says like, which of these are you in the couple, right? Would your partner rather
Mm.
this or this, right? It takes you through what's their favorite food and stuff, and then you send it to them or you send it to someone, and it has that open loop effect where it makes you watch it. It makes you like interested to go through. The content's
Yep.
super easy to produce. And the way they're currently being used, like in everything, newsletters were always the last people to figure out cool growth stuff. This is all being used by people making apps right now. So um, these are like app creators. Most of them are based in like uh, Eastern Europe or in Asia. And it's often like solo people. They'll create some kind of nonsense like couples app for your iPhone, which has a subscription built into it. And then they'll use these organic short form videos, like these couples quizzes and stuff like that, to get huge reach, right? They're getting like millions and millions and millions of views. And they all end with this CTA to go and get the app, to see more quizzes, to get this, to see the answer and that kind of stuff. And they are doing insane numbers. And the exact same thing would work in newsletters. Doesn't need to be an app. It could be a newsletter subscription. Right? There's a huge opportunity, kind of like with the BuzzFeed quizzes, to get those eyeballs right now, because you can use AI to like generate these videos. It's no work at all. It doesn't cost anything. You don't need the voiceovers, and you can pick pretty much any niche, B2B, B2C, whatever you want. Do something entertaining with this. Like just copy those formats, right? Put them onto that niche, get people onto the email list, do more entertaining stuff there. And then you have the ads, you have the lead gen, you're gathering all that data from the quizzes and the stuff that you're running with them. So you have that to sell through. Are they going to take you seriously? Are they going to buy, like, are you a trustworthy figure that they're going to buy a six-figure course from? No, right. But you can use that, like that attention and that relationship, like the fun relationship,
Right.
to highlight like people are going to be much like brands are going to be much more interested to work with you through that. So I was thinking that through. I'll pause for a second, and then I have like three ideas that I want to walk through.
I'm gonna cut you off. That walk. So say I had, I don't know, a finance newsletter, very successful,
Yeah,
really good looking guy who writes it.
yeah.
How would you use this to grow that newsletter, or is this something that you think you'd have to start totally from scratch? And is that why you're giving me ideas?
I don't think you have to do it totally from scratch. So, like, if we think about the water coolers, who's the ideal audience? Like, who are you trying to reach?
Basically, me, a 35-year-old retail investor who doesn't have enough time to read the Wall Street Journal every day.
Okay, so what are some things that would like stop your scroll? So if you go on TikTok and Instagram and you search like quiz, you look at these formats, these top performing reels. Basically, you can either just input that into ChatGPT and say, "Hey, like come up with ideas that fit these formats for this audience and niche," and they'll spit out like 20 or 50, and most of them honestly are pretty good. And they'll leave like you can even create the script and everything, then get an AI to create the imagery and stuff. Um, but in that audience, like it could be like, what are the like test your knowledge. Like, how are you this kind of investor? Like, I don't even know. Like, are you
Mhm.
like paper hands or whatever it's called, right? You know that stuff.
Yep.
Like, what are the 10 top performing stocks of the last week? Like, who are which are the 5 companies that are least likely to survive the tariffs? Like, how like where are you on like the tariff scorecard of like safe to like moving into your
Yeah.
parents' basement, right? You can do
Ooh,
that.
bringing it all the way back. I like that.
Yeah, and you can like people as soon as they see that they want to find out. Right? It's fun. They want to know the answer. They want to test themselves in some cases to see where they're actually at on those. And then in some of them you give the answer at the end, but in others you make them sign up for these or click through to get the answer. And
Mm,
by saving that to the end, you get all of those views. And even though you only convert like less than 1% of those views to subscribers, you're popping off with like, it's so easy to get 100,000, 500,000, a million views on that kind of stuff.
right.
Yeah, you rack up the numbers very, very quickly for free, and it does not cost any. You don't have to have someone sitting in a studio making these. It's literally all AI generated at this point.
So again, asking for a friend who has a finance newsletter, what tools are you using? Walk me through the steps there. I literally want to shut this podcast down and go try this. So tell me how to do this.
So there are a load. I'm blanking now. I'm going to put them in the chat description in
Cool.
the show notes. There are a load of tools for generating like the avatars. So like the fake people who'll be reading them out. If you want to have a person on the screen, most of them honestly they don't do that. They will pay someone on Fiverr like literally $50 to come up with the exact same format but with your own branding, and it's
Right.
question one, then there's a ticking thing that goes around for 5 seconds. Question two, ticking thing. Question three, ticking, thing. Uh, so on. They'll sometimes do like the hack of like question four is like comment your answer here or like tag someone in. You'll get
Yep.
extra time to do that, and then they'll carry
Mm,
on and so on. But it's once you have created that, you're paying someone maybe $5, $10, or you could even just update it yourself with like the script each time. People they come back to them once they know what it is. They love to see more and more of them. And you can just try out a couple of those different formats. And the more challenging thing is that you need to, for this to work, TikTok and YouTube and Instagram, but the really cool things like LinkedIn and Twitter as well are all pushing this. And Twitter and LinkedIn is even more interesting because they have like no good video content that people actually want to watch on them right now.
right.
Then like if you bring like the power of what has been optimized for TikTok and Instagram to LinkedIn, it's
Right.
going to blow their minds. They're not ready for that kind of thing right now. Which you see, the few people who are doing it are doing incredibly well with it. So you just bring that stuff in, you give them that good content, they go through, and then it's nice, basically.
That's awesome. Then what happens when are we continuing these videos in this finance newsletter that I write, or are we just using it as top of the funnel?
So I think it probably works best if you do continue it as the majority of the content. I think you could also do this you can do this in the way that some of those apps do, which is as almost like a sponsored segment, right? So in the middle of it, they'll say, question one, question two, question three, pause, go sign up for this newsletter that teaches me all this stuff so that I can become better at this. Question five, question six, call to action to go down, to go sign up again. Um, I think it works better if the whole newsletter is built around this idea, just because that person is much more likely to want to sign up. And I think we're in a really interesting situation where there's so little entertaining, fun content in your inbox. It's all news, opinion,
Yep.
how to do this, buy this thing.
Punditry.
Yeah, there's a lot of punditry. There's not much fun. Like, give me just a fun quiz. Why not?
Yeah, I've seen, it's actually the same, mutual friend. I won't blow up his spot or promote another newsletter, but they have a fairly big, news newsletter, right? But then they actually rolled off a polls newsletter, which I thought was a really interesting idea. And so I imagine, one, they're probably using it to grow their flagship newsletter, and then two, they're probably going to start using it to sell ads, right? Because if you can get people to click on things, the click through rate for that newsletter, and by that I mean, if they're doing a quiz, using Beehive or whatever, the click through rates are going to be huge there, and you're going to be able to sell that for a lot more. So I think that's a super interesting idea. If you can kind of integrate like the video plus use the tools that, some of these ESPs have built out to be able to do trivia or, answer questions. And I've used that quite a bit in the water coolest. And I went from, actually, I'm curious what your thoughts are on these hypothetical questions, because that's where, I kind of got the idea. I saw a bunch of these on TikTok and Instagram where it'll be like, "Hey, would you rather have, $1 million, or, you can buy any car you want for the next 10 years," right? Like all these like
Yes.
stupid hypotheticals. And I started putting those in the newsletter. I basically replaced questions about like which stock would you like to buy. I replaced those, and I posed it as like a money question, and literally overnight the engagement doubled, right? In what I was getting with those questions. They're all the way at the bottom, and I could see me kind of merging these two things and like using some of these videos to pull people in and be like, hey, there's more of this, in the newsletter. Because I think that's become one of the most popular sections. And I think it's to your point, it's like, yeah, the tariff stuff is like, you need to know that. We talk about that, but it's super depressing because you're looking at your portfolio, but then you get to go down and like answer a question about, I don't know, how you would defeat a bunch of seventh graders or something like that, right? Just these random kind of hypothetical questions that I think people really love.
Yeah. And what I love about it, especially if you have the opportunity with like a fresh newsletter or an offshoot newsletter that's purely entertainment focused, that's
Mhm.
just doing this quiz stuff, you get the engagement, which is awesome. But what really smart people have figured out is how to create interesting questions that also tell you really useful demographic stuff behind the scenes that you can use to turn around and sell those leads or those ads, right? So if you're doing one of the ideas that I think would work super well on this is like people that are into luxury watches. And you might like you can go in and you can learn a lot about what kind of watches they like and stuff.
Right.
But a lot of the questions that you could put in is like, which watch can you really afford? Or like which watch is like would you
Yeah.
buy
Yeah.
when and all this kind of stuff, right? Like what level of your career should you buy this and this watch and so on. Um or like rank your like rate your collection and everything. And there's a lot of questions that you put in there that behind the scenes are actually telling you a lot about a person's job, their living state, like all that kind of stuff, their income, um, their net worth that you can take either individually as qualification for selling leads to these companies that will pay a lot of money for high net worth individuals, or just as like demographic data on your audience and say, hey,
Yeah.
20% of my audience is, own their own house, have a net worth of, 3 million and plus in assets or whatever you can do.
Damn, that's look at you, Mark Zuckerberg, just hoovering up people's data. I love that, right? And that just plays into, I think we can leave it here for today. Is like that just plays into the first party data play of like that's what newsletters are all about. You can't get that elsewhere. You're not gonna, be able to advertise. You can reach cohorts with Meta, but like you don't know exact data about people. And that's a great way to collect it for your newsletter. And then go to your advertisers and be like, listen, these are the exact people, without sharing their email address, these are the exact people that I have, and they, whether they want to buy a Rolex or a Timex, right? Like you go to those companies and be like, listen, I have the data to back it up that these people are ready to buy and they have the money. So I absolutely love that.
And I mean, if you have an audience that says they already own Rolexes or they are looking to buy a Rolex, if you if you want to sell a Rolex, you don't go to a place that people are buying watches. You go to a place that people are buying Bentleys and like luxury cars, because the Rolex is the impulse product that those people can buy like on the day while they're choosing their ridiculously expensive car, right? And it's the same thing here, but a step down. Like if you have an audience of people who are looking to buy a Patek or a Rolex, whatever it is, um, you take that to the brands that want to sell like luxury wallets and financial services and all this kind of stuff, right? You make the money from that because they really want to reach those people too. But like, so I said, I'd give you three examples, and I'll do it real quick. So the luxury watches was one that I think would absolutely
Mhm.
crush it because it's such a visual thing, and people like it's so easy to like find that niche. Another one that's B2C that is completely an opposite audience is pet owners, dog owners, cat owners, something like that. They're super interested. They have no content. They love to share it, which means it's going to, that does very good things for the algorithm in terms of like getting you more of those views. And it's a really nice data point to have of like, does this person have a cat? Yes or no? Great. Then if it's yes, there are lots
Yeah.
of companies that sell cat products that really want to reach out to you.
Yeah.
And if these tariffs ever go down, you can start creating your own products for them, right? You can
And
basically,
plus you also know, you go to like Blue Apron because you know these people are very lonely and eat by themselves. So you can sell them meals for one.
it's a great idea. You can sell them a meal for one and just do like a regular health check to see that they're still going and a cat isn't squatting
The
over
newsletter
their
is
cold
like,
body.
just checking in. How bad is your life? Like a lonely cat lady.
It's like question one: do you call your cat your child? Yes. Okay. Unsubscribed. We're gonna sell your leads.
Oh,
Sell your
it's your
leads for a lot.
better help ads. That's perfect.
I think they'll sponsor anything. And the
Yeah.
last one that I want to go into, though, because those are both like B2C examples, but where I think
Yeah.
this gets really interesting and there's a lot less competition is on the B2B side, right? The professional side. So I was thinking just about niches that I'm kind of familiar with, like tech sales, marketing, like coders, that kind of thing. Basically, anybody in any of those niches, they have zero fun content relating to their work. And there's definitely like no real fun newsletter, nothing entertaining for them. You could eventually even like end up building a community around, right? Like kind of like you maybe in the old days have a Facebook group that was like full of like random memes and stuff for your sort of like what you were working in. That doesn't really exist anymore in most places, but
I
this could
bet
be that
it
thing.
does exist. We just don't know about it because we're of the age that we don't go on Facebook anymore. But I bet our
That's true.
parents are doing that.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. I'm sure that they're all secretly arguing with a Russian bot farm somewhere in a B2B sales Facebook group. That's what's happening.
No,
Um,
the B2B, I totally agree with you. Like I would say like half my clients on the consulting side are B2B. And that's the biggest thing that I point out to them is like, guys, like let's have a little bit more fun here, right? Like you only need to you just need to be better than like the McKinsey white paper and everyone will love it because there's nothing exciting going on in, supply chain management or oil and gas exploration, right? It's like just make it a little bit more exciting. And I could see these videos, I don't know. I don't know if you have any examples here, but like, yeah, like how much of a tech sales cliche are you? Like, stuff like that, if you did that with accountants or whatever, I think those would crush on LinkedIn and you would get a ton of subs that way. It'd probably work on Twitter too.
yeah,
Maybe
there are
not
so many
Instagram as
things.
much for B2B, but I think on those two platforms you would kill it and you'd be basically the first one doing it.
Yeah, and LinkedIn, and even honestly, even TikTok and Instagram, like those people are there. And
They are
the
humans,
really
yes.
interesting thing, and this is what I was coming back to, I I missed out on earlier was what the hard part about this is all of these platforms give new accounts a boost on their videos, right? They'll give you like this little extra bit of juice just to see other videos you're putting out, where are they going to land? so that they know if they've got someone who's doing something really good, they can figure out who that is. And it also gets you hooked as the creator in theory. So you're like, oh, my first video got 2,000 views. I better do another one, right? So what you have to do is you basically have to seed a lot of these different accounts, which does require some work. And obviously you can just outsource it, right? You can go to Fiverr and Upwork and places like that and get people to do it for you. But you're essentially, that's the bulk of the work, is like putting the same video slightly adapted across 50 different accounts. And one of those, if it's a half decent video, is going to pop off and hit 6, 7 figures in views. And the rest are going to hit like 10K combined.
Damn, this is a good idea. We need to end this podcast because I am going to go make some of these videos for the water coolest.
And I'm going to go and get those foot pics ready for the OnlyFans, the Letterland OnlyFans.
That's actually a great. So, quick side note: I've always thought that. I actually considered that when I launched the water coolest kind of paid version, as I was like, how funny would it be to put it on OnlyFans? And I just had no idea if you can even put like written content on there. If my wife or mom are, watching, I've never been on there, so I have no idea how it works. But I always thought that would be a cool idea. And I know actually Sticky's Finger Joint, which is a funny name. And hello to Louis' cat. Sticky's Finger Joint, which is a chicken place. I don't know if it's just in New York City, but they actually started in OnlyFans to like promote stuff. And I think there's an opportunity there. I think more people should think about it. So uh, let's end it with, we promise we will come back with some ideas on how to grow a newsletter using OnlyFans. How about that?
We can definitely try it. I mean, it's not going to be B2B because you're not expensing that, but we can definitely
That's
give
fair.
it a go. I will. Let's put it this way: you think up some of the ideas of what the content could be. I will take the heavy hit. I will take the week and spend it researching OnlyFans for us. We can see each other on the other side. I'm sure I'll be a changed man.
Absolutely. All right, cool, man. I appreciate your time.
See you next week.